We are joined by Eagles reporter Louis DiBiase. He's also the host of Locked On Eagles. Interviews the coaches, talks to the players. This guy's as locked on with the Eagles as anyone on the planet, and he just got back from Radio Row in New Orleans. Louis, it's been a whirlwind week for you, but first thing I want to know is just the Eagles heading into this one. This is a much better Eagles team than we saw a couple years ago when both teams scored 35 points as the last guy to get the kick that wins. What can you see about this Eagles team versus the last Eagles team heading into this matchup?
I think there's two key differences that are going to give the Eagles an advantage compared to Super Bowl 57. It's two additions Howie Roseman made this offseason, signing running back Saquon Barkley and hiring defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I think when you look at that loss, what were two things the Eagles could not do? They could not maintain time of possession. Yeah, they put up over 35 points. So you'd be like, I'll take that offensive performance. But Miles Sanders had a terrible game. They had no rushing impact whatsoever. They couldn't keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And late in games, that is very important because if he has the ball late, he's going to beat you just like he did 2 years ago. So having Saquon Barkley instead of Miles Sanders, night and day. And then Vic Fangio, I just think he's going to have a much better game plan for trying to contain Mahomes and Travis Kelce, especially those outside of structure improv plays. I think that was something Jonathan Gannon just had no answer for 2 years ago. And quite frankly, I think Gannon's head was in other directions. I think he was preparing to be the Arizona Cardinals head coach, and I really do personally think that affected him. So Fangio and Saquon being with the Eagles now instead of Gannon and Miles Sanders, I think that's a huge upgrade, and that could be all the difference.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about this Eagles team, too, is while the rest of the league, it's about passing, it's about offense, that Eagles team is sitting at 2-2. You have that meeting, and it's about, you know what, how we're going to win? We're going to win with running the football and defense. Talk about just how different this Eagles team has been since that 2-2 start and how they've really gotten here behind the best defense that's gone from 26-1 in the sport and Saquon Barkley, who's just been electrifying all season long.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool story that the Eagles just went total old school ball. I mean, they just said, we're going to ground and pound on offense and we're going to win because of defense. And I think in the NFL, it's been proven that you win with quarterback play, right? And passing the football, that's the consistent theme. And I still think that's the right way to go the majority of the time. And the Eagles, I thought, were kind of feeling the pressure of that. And they were trying to be somebody they weren't, throwing it 30 plus times a game. And it wasn't working, and they were 2-2. And they finally said, let's lean into, forget what the outside noise says, like forget what it's supposed to look like. Let's do what actually works. And they totally went all in on that. And I think Jalen Hurts deserves a lot of credit for the selflessness of being the Robin to Saquon's Batman, because it worked. They leaned on a historic combination of a great offensive line, a generational running back talent, and a top tier mobile quarterback. So I think it was the right move in that bye week, that meeting between Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, and Nick Sirianni. It might be, if they win this title, it might be one of the most important moments in franchise history. I just think it's cool that it's 2024 and a running back could be the reason that a three-peat doesn't happen with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So that's a crazy story, again, considering how unanimously people believe in one way to build a team. So I just think the Eagles are a selfless team and they don't care what it looks like. They just want to win.
Yeah, and then this is an Eagles team. I mean, 15-1 since then, a plus 27 turnover margin. You've won your games by an average of 13.8 points, but I don't think that Nick Sirianni gets a ton of the credit. I mean, you've heard all the talk about the coordinators and leading on Kellen Moore and everyone that's put this team together, but this is a guy that's really putting together a great resume. I mean, he took the Eagles to the Super Bowl back in 2023. You lose by just a field goal. Your regular season record is 48-20. He has the third highest winning percentage by a head coach in the modern era in their first 50 games. He's in the conversation with guys like John Madden and George Allen. Do you think that a win here really takes him to, okay, we can finally talk about Nick Sirianni as an elite head coach, or is it something that's always going to be linked to him that he's just going to be one of those guys who has a talented roster, has a great GM and a great infrastructure around him?
Yes and no. I feel like it's going to be a fact that Nick Sirianni is an elite head coach if he wins this championship, because like you said, he'll be with the likes of John Madden and Vince Lombardi as guys that in their first 4 years went to the playoffs every single season with different looking teams, made it to 2 championships, won one against one of the greatest dynasties ever, stopped the three-peat. But because what he does great is not really quantifiable with stats or film study, because he's not a play caller, because he is not the guy running the defense, because Howie Roseman is so good at building this roster and it's so talented, and he has coordinators that are running each unit, yeah, he's not going to get the credit. I think even if they win this football game, I think his impact will be 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th on the list of storylines that people are going to talk about as to why the Eagles win this game. So whether people believe it or not, yes, this will prove that Nick Sirianni, what he does works. And I really do think his players love him. That culture, I've never seen a team this close, even compared to like the 2017 title team. And that's where Nick makes his impact. But because he's not a play caller, because he's not what normally, again, just like running the football, because he's not what it's supposed to look like, I still don't think he's going to get the credit that he deserves if they win this game.
Yeah, I mean, you see Howie Roseman, how he's built this roster, the talent that they put around guys like Jalen Hurts, how quickly they've rebuilt this defense. It's still one of the youngest defenses in the NFL. A lot of rookies that have stood out, a lot of second-year guys that have emerged. But got to talk about Jalen Hurts, because I think that along with Sirianni, he's another guy where if he can win this game, he propels his legacy, his stature in the sport to, yeah, maybe he's not up there with Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, but he's right in that next tier, at the top of the next tier. I think the fascinating thing, too, is like we talked about going to more of a run-heavy team, and he, of course, impacts the game with his legs, but it was what he did with his arm in the last win against the Commanders. He goes 20 for 28, 246 yards, has a touchdown, no interceptions, which is the second time since mid-November that he's thrown for more than 200 yards. Like what he said after the game, too, said they took the straight jacket off him. It looks like he's ready to come in and just really prove himself. But what can you say about Jalen Hurts heading into this game and what this could do for his legacy?
Yeah, that's the thing is, yes, Jalen Hurts, is he the processor in the pocket or the accurate thrower of Joe Burrow from a consistency standpoint, or Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes? No, he's not. He's elite in a different way. He's elite like Russell Wilson was elite in Seattle, or Cam Newton was elite in Carolina. He's an elite deep ball passer, a mobile quarterback. He doesn't turn the football over. He's one of the most clutch players in the fourth quarter. And yes, he is inconsistent in the pocket, but also his low passing numbers this year were by design for the most part. Like, he did take a back seat because Saquon Barkley was, again, having the best season a running back has ever had. So sure, there were games that Jalen Hurts was struggling this year, but there were other games where his numbers were low. And I said he could have did a lot more if he had the opportunities he's had the last 2 years. And when he had those opportunities in the NFC Championship, he looked really good. You look at the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers against a great defense. He shredded that defense. You look at the shootout with Joe Burrow earlier in the year. He won that game throwing the football. So I think Jalen Hurts has proven over the last 3 years that he belongs in that category of top tier quarterbacks. No, if he wins this game, am I going to put him over those four names I mentioned, including Lamar Jackson? I don't think so, but I think he'll be, you can't list your top five quarterbacks to me if Jalen wins this game and not say he's not a top five quarterback. With 2 Super Bowl appearances at age 26, with a ring, you beat Pat Mahomes, you out-dueled him in the game that you lost. He's made the playoffs every year he's a starter. His win percentage all time is up there with the likes of Tom Brady and all-time greats. Yeah, I feel like the debate will be over. Will it be? Probably not, like the Sirianni talking point, but I think the conversation will be over from a factual standpoint if he pulls this off.
Yeah, and as far as what a perfectly executed game plan looks like for Jalen Hurts in this one, we know sometimes he can struggle against exotic blitzes and pressure, and does he try to overcompensate and play some hero ball by trying to get yards on the ground versus trying to go to some quick game with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown? When you kind of look at the chess match between Spags and Kellen Moore, what are you looking at as far as how to get the best out of Jalen Hurts in this one?
I'm very curious how Spags is going to go after Jalen Hurts. He's going to send pressure. That's what he does, but is going to be more zone blitzes, man blitzes. And Jalen's a mixed bag when it comes to pressure. Like you said, sometimes he panics, he drops his eyes and tries to do too much with his legs when he doesn't see that first read. And that's where he can kind of get killed. But at the same time, there are games where if Kellen Moore gives him quick answers, if he does get the ball out fast, he can carve up pressure too. I think he did that really well against the Commanders, but he's got to get the ball out fast. He's got to be in a rhythm. And I like the idea of if Spags is going to send the man blitzes, if Hurts can escape that initial rush, there's going to be opportunities for one-on-one explosive plays down the field with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Dallas Goedert. That's kind of what happened in the Washington game. So it could be a gift and a curse the way Spags coaches up that Chiefs defense. And Jalen's kind of a mixed bag with pressure. We're not sure what version we'll get on Sunday, but that's going to be one of the most important parts of this game is how do Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore answer the blitz? Because There's games they do really well with it, but there's games they don't. So that's going to be a huge variance that we got to watch.
Yeah, we know that Steve Spagnuolo, he's got the blitz bag just nonstop. It's not if he's going to send it, it's when is he going to do it. But I'm curious how he's going to use that to try to stop the run in Saquon Barkley.
No, it's a good question. And that's the thing. They're going to have to be creative stopping Saquon because, like the Chiefs said in a lot of their media day press conferences this week, you can't really overcommit to have 8-9 guys in the box 90% of the time, because if you do that, like I said, A.J. Brown is one of the best man beaters in the NFL, and so is Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert, I think, has been the most consistent part of the Eagles' passing attack in the playoffs. If you're going to load the box all the time, that's when those guys can start to eat in the passing game. That's when Jalen Hurts then suddenly in the RPO game, he pulls the football, and then he's going to make moves as a runner. So they have to be different when it comes to going after Saquon. Maybe they dial up corner blitzes like they did against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship, where Trent McDuffie's going after them. But I do think from Spags, you're going to see, again, like you said, with pressure, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and a matter of where. I mean, Jalen Hurts is going to have to be locked in, and the pre-snap reads, that's going to be really important.
Yeah, and you look at the Chiefs, I mean, 28th in stack box usage, 32nd in success rate against the stack box. How do you think that impacts Saquon Barkley? Because sometimes, I mean, a stacked box can lead to a big run. One thing I'm hoping for is some explosives for Saquon Barkley, him doing somersaults to the end zone, having big plays. How do you think that the Eagles try to manipulate that?
No, that's the interesting part of a stacked box. Sometimes if you can get through that initial first wave, and the Eagles offensive line is really good at getting through that mud and creating some lanes for Saquon Barkley. If that is possible, Saquon Barkley's going to hit home runs. I mean, he is one of 54 players all time to have at least 20 touchdowns from scrimmage in the regular season, the playoffs combined. He's the only guy ever to average over 30 yards per touchdown. It's an unbelievable stat. And he's kind of like the Deshaun Jackson of running back, where anytime he touches the football, he can pull off those home runs. So if the Chiefs are going to load the box, that might help put the Eagles, it might be something in their favor, because Saquon is so good at taking the ball to the house. So it's really hard. I don't know if you're Kansas City, how you stop Saquon. I think it's more of a containment thing than you're not going to completely remove him from this football game. So again, that chess match is just going to be so interesting to watch.
Yeah, it feels like to me, as long as every single play is designed with pressure in mind and everything else kind of takes care of itself, yeah, you really have to feel confident about where the Eagles are at. Now, as far as the other side of the football, I mean, what keeps you up at night about this Chiefs offense?
It's really just the plays outside of structure. It's when the play breaks down and Patrick Mahomes does evade that initial rush. He gets outside the numbers. He's looking for number 87. And Travis Kelce, is he the elite tight end that we've seen even 2 years ago when the Eagles played them in the Super Bowl last? No, I don't think he's that same player, but he's still a top tier tight end that, especially when he's not even running a route, he's just finding the soft spots of your zone coverage when Pat Mahomes on the run, and Kelce knows where to go so he looks for him. Those are the plays I'm nervous about, because the Eagles are, I mean, they're the number one ranked defense in the league for a reason. They're so talented on all three levels. They finally have a full complement of defensive players at every position. There's no Band-Aid starter, if you will, where there's a guy you're just winning with instead of, winning because of. So I think it's just those outside of structure improv plays that if you can't finish, when you get your hands on Mahomes, if you can't finish the sack, kind of like in Super Bowl 57, that's how you can kind of lose these games. Those got to have it moments. So that's what I'm watching the most.
How do they try to stop Jalen Carter? And do you think that Tooney's a guy they'll have matched up with him?
I think it's going to be Tooney. I think you're going to see a lot of double teams. The thing is with that, it creates a lot of one-on-one opportunities for Milton Williams right next to Jalen Carter. Milton Williams was a top 3 player this year in pass rush win rate at defensive tackle. Moro Ijoma is also a player, a second-year guy that's kind of been breaking out as a result of feeding off of the attention Jalen Carter gets. So you're not going to completely take Jalen Carter out of this football game. I think you're going to see a lot of double teams, though, and that's why the other Eagles defensive linemen, Nolan Smith, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham might be playing in this game as well. His last game as an Eagle. They're going to have to take opportunities. They're going to have to take advantage of those opportunities in one-on-ones.
And with the Eagles kind of being in zone coverage and Patrick Mahomes having opportunities to kind of break the pocket, get out of structure, how big of a concern is it that not only do you have Travis Kelce, who definitely had a big game a couple years ago, but there's more options now. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, he's more comfortable with him. Hopkins, he's comfortable with him. Xavier Worthy is an explosive young player. I think that's an interesting storyline too, the young players on both teams. And then it feels like he's willing to go to each of these guys. He's trusting them more and more. How big of a concern is that for you?
Yeah, it's a strength on strength battle. This
Yeah.
is not the Chiefs receiving core of 2 years ago where it's, Juju and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Mecole Hardman rotating in. Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, that's a much better trio than the Eagles saw 2 years ago. So the good thing is the Eagles this time around, they have personnel to match that. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were 2 Rookie of the Year finalists at cornerback. Darius Slay is having a revived season at age 34. I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship are 2 of the most underrated safeties in the NFL. So they just have to, again, in zone coverage, you got to make sure you're in the right area. You got to communicate. When you hand off guys in coverage, you can't just do it to an open, empty space. Like, you really got to be locked in as a unit in this game. And you got to hold on because there's going to be plays where you got to hold on for 6, 7, 8 seconds in coverage. So it's going to be a fun chess match. That's the Chiefs are much better, much more improved at receiver than the last time around, but the Eagles are much younger and faster this time around in the secondary.
All right, I got some quick hitters before I let you go, Louis. X factor on offense for the Eagles.
I think the X factor is going to be Dallas Goedert. I think he has the mismatch in the offense. The play action pass is going to be something they want to utilize. The RPO game in the red zone. The Chiefs are not great at defending tight ends this year statistically. I think it's Dallas Goedert on offense.
How about on defense?
On defense, for me, it's Cooper DeJean in the slot. He's going to have to go after multiple different types of pass catchers. There's going to be times he's one-on-one with Travis Kelce. There's times he's one-on-one with Xavier Worthy, maybe DeAndre Hopkins. Those are all very different, stylistically different pass catchers. So I think the rookie in the slot is going to be very important in this game.
I'll give you one bold prediction.
One bold prediction. I think the Eagles are, I think there's going to be, in the fourth quarter, they're going to get a key turnover, and there's going to be like 7 minutes left. I do not think they're going to give the Chiefs the ball back this time around. I think Saquon Barkley, they're going to have one of those vintage 7 to 10 minute drives that ends the game. And this time around, they don't give them the ball back and they win it.
Awesome. Okay, so last 2. Super Bowl MVP, and if you can, throw out, let me get a score prediction.
All right, so I think this is going to be, I don't think it's going to be, 40 plus points for each side like it was. They're over 30 like it was Super Bowl 57. I'm going to say Eagles 30. I'll go Chiefs 25. I think Super Bowl MVP is going to be Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to cap off the greatest running back season of all time, and I think he's going to have a huge game in New Orleans.
I love it. Hey, you are America's team this week. I know you've seen those memes, who America's rooting for. It's all just one big gray map and a little tiny speck for Kansas City, and then the rest is the Eagles, okay? So represent, and thank you for joining us here on The Big Lead, and we'll catch up with you soon, and good luck, man. Hope your team wins.
We're going to try.